So it is the week of Meghan and Harry's wedding. How exciting, a royal wedding. As a celebration of America coming together with the United Kingdom, I've come up with a recipe that I think you will love. I call it Victoria Smores. It's a cross between a Victoria sandwich and a chocolate s'more, and I think you are gonna love it. If you want the recipe for these bad boys, keep watching. So what you're going to need to make this delicious Victoria s'more is some sugar, some chocolate, some flour, self-raising, a little bit of icing sugar, some marshmallows, a big lump of butter and 3 eggs. Oh, and some cream. So let's get started. To start, you're going to need to take your sugar and your butter and you're going to need to whip it up till it's light and fluffy. So let's pop these into my little trusty noble steed. So in has gone the butter and the sugar, and now I'm going to whiz it all up. So I'm just going to scrape down the sides. It's all getting stuck to the sides at the moment. At the moment it's like yellow in colour, it's not quite ready, it needs a good whip longer. You want it to be light and fluffy and creamy, almost like pale white colour you want it to go. Okay, so now it's time to add the eggs. I'm going to add all 3, scrape down the sides and then give it another mix up. I use free-range eggs. Happy eggs is happy cakes. Okay, so now I'm going to go in with my flour. I've put 2 bowls next to each other, both very similar looking. So I'm going to put the icing sugar to one side, because that would be a very sweet cake. We'll come back to this bit later. And I'm going to add my flour. So I'm going to throw all of my flour in. And I'm going to give it a little whiz up. So this is nearly ready. I'm just going to scrape down the sides that one last time. There's lots of lumps of flour, there's a few bits of butter that haven't mixed in, and you want it to be perfectly combined. But it's really important not to overmix a Victoria sponge recipe. If you leave it on for too long, it can mean that it gets a bit dense. So let's pop that on again, just for a couple more mixes. So there we go, there's my Victoria sponge ready. I'm going to spoon it into my little, I've got this lovely little mini Victoria sponge tin, 12 little sponges there. I'm going to fill them about 2/3 full so they'll rise beautifully to the top hopefully, and then I'm going to make some little Victoria s'mores. Okay, so here's my mixture and I'm just going to dollop it into the tray. So I'm just going to smooth these down now and make sure it's all even, as good as I can with a spoon. You don't want to have a wonky top on your little Victoria s'more. And these are going to be really quick in the oven. Unlike a big Victoria sandwich, these are only going to need about 8 to 12 minutes, which is perfect if you're someone who's a bit impatient like me. So there we go, all filled. I'm going to pop them in the oven now and we'll check them in about 8 minutes. So while my little Victoria sponges are baking, I'm going to get on with the fillings. So I'm making 2 fillings to make it just like a s'more. I'm making a marshmallowy fondant, my sort of take on the melted marshmallow, and I'm making a chocolate ganache. So instead of the 2 graham crackers that you'd use to make a s'more, you're using Victoria sponge, which is going to make it even better, right? So I'm going to make the ganache first. So it's a chocolate ganache, which is actually the same recipe that I used in my chocolate truffles video. So if you want to make some chocolate truffles, you can just do this. If you want to watch the whole video on that, I'll put the link somewhere here and go check that out. So you need 100 grams of chocolate to 50 grams of cream. So half the amount of cream to chocolate. Doesn't matter, you can upscale it if you want to make more, but that's the ratios that you need, 2 to 1. So I'm going to put this on the hob and get it to a boil and pour it over my chocolate. So I'll bring this back once it's bubbly and boiling. So I've got my boiling cream and I'm actually going to pour my chocolate into this glass bowl so you can see all of that chocolate melting. I'm going to pour my cream over the chocolate and I'm just going to let that sit for about 30 seconds. This is the perfect time to go make a cup of tea or put your feet up. Okay, so that will do. So now I'm a bit impatient, so I'm gonna start stirring this. But if you want, you could leave it for a minute or two and then come back to it and it would all be fully melted. But I just wanna get stuck in there. Here we go, so I'm gonna start mixing now and you'll see all of that chocolate starting to melt in there. And it's gonna combine. And this is what's known as a ganache, which is the center of a truffle. If you were making this into chocolate, you could add something now like some lavender essence or some vanilla. You could add coffee. You could add little bits of chopped praline nuts. You could add anything really, and that would make it a really delicious chocolate. But we just want it plain because we're using it as almost like a chocolate icing for our Victoria Smore. Make sure all of the cream has been mixed in. If you want to do this recipe as well and you want to do it like a pouring chocolate, you just need to do slightly more cream and then it would turn into a lovely glossy sauce. So there we go, that's our chocolate ganache. It's so shiny and glossy, lovely. And now I'm going to make our marshmallow fondant. To make our marshmallow fondant, we're going to need cream, icing sugar and marshmallows. First of all, we want to whip up our cream so it goes thick. This is Dione double cream, which I've used in videos before. It's from a Welsh dairy farm, which I really love, so I get this cream. And I'm just going to pour in 150 grams of the cream. There we go. And then I'm going to whip it up so it goes really thick. That's now starting to get thick, so before it gets too thick, we're going to add our icing sugar. And you'll see when it comes up on the end of the thing, it's not really thick, it's just starting to get a bit gloopy. So to begin with, I'm just going to add half of my icing sugar. You want to save the other half back for once you've got your marshmallows, because you want to be able to get a feel for it rather than just chucking it all in. Now that already looks so delicious, but just you wait until we put the marshmallows in. Look at that. It's like thick, it's a take on butter icing. It's like thick, but instead of butter, you've obviously got cream, so it's even more creamy, obviously, and it's just so good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my marshmallows and I'm going to whack them in the microwave at 20-second intervals. What we do not want is for the marshmallows to grow too much that they spill over the bowl, because when you heat marshmallows in the microwave, they expand, so just be careful. So I'm going to bring them back once they're all melted. Mix them in between the 20 seconds so that you get a nice marshmallow kind of paste. So here are my marshmallows and they are absolutely melted. They look like whole marshmallows until you mix them, and then you see it's like marshmallow gloop. And I could eat this on top of a cupcake. You could even just use this if you wanted in the middle of your Victoria Smores, melted up. But this just makes it a bit more like a buttercream, so a bit more like an original Victoria sponge filling. So I'm going to add this now. I'm not going to add it all because, a bit like the icing sugar, I want to get a feel for the right texture, so I don't just want to put it all in because it might suddenly go too runny. Oh, look at that. That looks so good. So that will do for now. I'm just going to turn my mixer on. Now this is looking absolutely delicious. Look at that. It's kind of stringy and so sweet. But just to make it a bit sweeter, I'm going to add a little bit more icing sugar because it is too thin to use in the middle of my Victoria Smore. So I'm going to probably add most of this now to make it more like a proper pipeable buttercream texture. Okay, so that's done. I've made my 2 fillings. I've made a delicious marshmallowy buttercream, and I've made a chocolate ganache ready to assemble my Victoria Smore. It's absolutely perfect timing. My cakes have just come out the oven, so I'm going to let them cool for about half an hour, maybe possibly even to an hour. You want them completely cold, and at the same time I'm going to refrigerate my buttercream because it's a little on the soft side, so you want it to be as firm as possible for spreading. So my mini Victoria sponges have now come out of the oven. They've had about an hour to cool and they've come out of their little cases. So I'm going to cut them in half and then I'm going to fill them with my delicious Victoria Smore fillings. So I've got a little, it's like a little serrated knife. This will mean that your cake doesn't go everywhere. You don't want it to crumble. What I like is they've got these really cute little domed tops. They're so like, they look really homemade and just quite sweet. Okay, so now for the moment of truth. I've got my icing here. I actually added about 100 grams more icing sugar afterwards because it was a little bit soft. So yeah, just add a little bit more icing sugar and I think you'll get the perfect consistency. For this one, I'm just using a bag, cutting off the end, and I'm just going to pipe it in a round motion. Right, this one needs just a tiny bit more. Okay, so that's like your little shell for your delicious chocolate ganache. I would say don't do quite as much of that because that's a lot left over. Now for the exciting bit, I'm going to fill it with this delicious chocolate ganache. So you don't want to cut such a big hole on this one because you want to take it nice and slow. And you've just got to fill that hole full with your chocolate ganache. And now you've just got to put their little tops on. And people will think that they're just little Victoria sponges until they get into the middle and they taste that marshmallowy filling and the chocolate ganache in the middle will be a really delightful surprise. So now it's time to decorate. You've got two ways you can decorate these. You can take some icing sugar, and I'll do that on half of them, and dust them with icing sugar, or you can take some more of your ganache and you can pipe that over the top. So we'll do the icing sugar first. So I'm going to take my icing sugar and I'm going to dust it over the top. So what you do is you take your chocolate ganache and you just stripe it across the cake. So there you have it, my Victoria Smores. If you try these at home, let me know and let me see them with the hashtag #BaconWithAlana. I love to see all the creations that you come up with. Don't forget to like and subscribe and have an amazing royal wedding, Harry and Meghan. I'm sure your day is going to be filled with lots of lovely cake. See you next time. Bye.